good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most powerful hour and a half of your day. Today's show is how much more do you need
Need
to suffer?
to suffer.
How much more do you need to suffer? I'm Michael, the MC and Opportunity Ambassador, and today with me is Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator,
Nice to be here.
Willow, our trauma consultant,
Hi, everyone.
Deirdre, our development strategist,
Hi, I'm really glad to hear.
and Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Greetings and blessed love to everyone.
And so, where do we begin on
I'll begin. I'll
our
start.
adventure today?
I'll go. I'm just checking my mic level. They can hear me. That's good. All right. So we talked about mothers and the challenges that we have with our own mothers and the challenges we have with bringing ourselves up. But you know what the thing is? The big thing is that a lot of people spend their lifetime blaming their physical parents, their biological parents, for the issues they have in their life. Instead of like saying, okay, this is not working. I'm taking the reins away from you and I'm now in charge of my life. Like, what is that? When did it happen with you guys where you said, okay, enough is enough. I am going to now stop following, suffering, beating myself up, creating strife in my life because of what they said when I was little. And now I'm sure there's many times because it's like not a one decision, but go ahead.
I have something that fits. It's not my words, but I think they're really powerful. It goes like that. It's a saying. It's a quote. God has given you a spirit with wings on which to soar into the spacious firmament of love and freedom. Is it not pitiful then that you cut your own wings with your own hands and suffer your soul to crawl like an insect upon the earth? And this is from Khalil Gibran.
Of course it was Khalil Gibran. That sounds like him too. That's pretty heavy. I feel guilty now.
Well, but you were talking about parents, right? And so is it not within the power of our own hands, to let go of blaming our parents or in fact anybody else as well, and take things in our own hands or wings and fly?
I like that.
Are you guys flying or are you crawling?
I feel like I'm flying now. But
I don't
also,
know.
I had a very different experience growing up. I thought arrogantly that I was unaffected by that because for a very long time I wasn't raised by my mother. And so I thought that like when I went back, I would be smart and like I would be enough of an adult to like not be affected. But I was proven wrong when I studied some like biology and how it intertwines with psychology and how that role was never actually fulfilled. And because of that, I was able to see a pattern of everywhere I went. I used to tell people that the little old lady would find me and she'd become my mother. I had like a mother in Korea. I had a mother in Colorado. I had another mother in Colorado. They used to argue on Facebook about who was more motherly to me. And I even found like quite a few people in Virginia that I was like, oh, I could have seen myself becoming like really good friends with this person, but I haven't because I recognize that pattern. So I went through a lot of suffering in my adulthood over the same like parental issues that a lot of children do. I don't know. That's what everything Agnieszka was saying reminded me of, to be honest.
How about you, Deidre?
When did I get to that point? I don't know. I think I was quite young. I don't know. I started noticing that I had different opinions, maybe, and it kind of grew out from there. But though I had a lot of suffering to be able to do that. That whole I don't know. It's releasing wings. To me, it's kind of walking out of a cage. I like that concept because
Or the
even if you
cave.
can have a
Maybe walking out of the cave and into the sunlight.
cage,
I was
CAGE.
referring to Plato's Republic.
Oh,
And the
that's cool. Yeah, I guess it's the same kind of concept. But even if the cage door's open, like it takes a bit for somebody to actually realize that and want to be able to walk out of that.
Let's see. For me, I was really eager to become an adult, so I signed up for the Army day one, my 17th birthday, and that was really a kind of a step in the like I'm taking charge of my life. And unfortunately, I handed it over to somebody else immediately. But hey, I learned something.
Okay, guys, everybody who's listening, you can definitely write comments and give us questions. Rod just said that the allegory of the cave is one of his favorites.
Mine too.
Did you want to describe it, Michael? You probably do a better job than I do with stuff like that.
It's the idea of, like slaves are chained in a cave and they're looking at a wall that's like figures are projected on it from a fire behind them. And they look at that and they think that is reality. And then one of the slaves is let go and he gets out of the cave and he sees the sunlight for the first time. And he's like, holy cow, there's a whole nother world out here. He goes back to get the rest of the slaves and they tell him, you're crazy. And
the shadows on the wall is all there is. That's all we have in life is shadows on the wall. There is no such thing as sunlight. You are crazy. That's only stuff of legends.
Yeah, and I think it relates. It still relates today. A lot of people are, involved in their illusions, unfortunately.
It's possible that every single one of us is in a cave on some level, in some aspect of our lives. We're not willing to see reality. Just looking at
what kind of mental attitudes or what kind of posturing will it take to even accept the possibility of there being, something different, something else out there? Because, in the allegory of the cage, there, the one that was outside, he came back, offering to take out the other guys, but, they wouldn't even go with him. But even if they were incapable of freeing themselves, getting rid of their shackles and chains and basically walking out, but still just like the mental state of, oh, is there something else? They didn't even have that. So, how difficult is it then if you don't even have the mental state and the posture to say, oh, there might be something else beyond me. But so that, to me, that means that there's already like a mental slavery right there that even supersedes the physical one in a way.
So what I'm reminded of is the point in IFS when you get to a part and you're starting to ask them if they want to change their job, if they wanted to do something different, what would that look like? Before you even get to that question, you have to ask them if it was possible to do a different job, would you be interested in that? And a lot of times you have to field arguments like, well, it's not possible. It's like, okay, it's not possible. I understand that. Let's say if it were possible, would that be something that you're interested in? And usually you get them down to, yes, that's something I'd be interested in. And then they're more likely to let you offer solutions at that point because they have acknowledged what you're trying to give them.
That reminds me of the work from Byron Katie, where it's like, can you be 100% sure that it's not possible? And it's like, if there's only one person in the world, if there's only one job or one possibility out there in the world, is it, you can never be 100% sure. So it reminded me of that.
So we have two questions from the listeners. Merkabex says, what about the allegory of the crabs? And I think what you're talking about, Merkabex, is the crabs in a bucket where, everybody wants you to pull. Basically, it's related to the cave, I think. Everybody wants you to stay down where they're at. They don't want you to elevate yourself, because then they don't feel as comfortable with their being lower than you. You know, if you're all at the same level, then you can all relate.
I would say that I have a different opinion to that. I don't think that people kind of want to hold you down because, like, how dare you go beyond yourself. I think it's more just like, oh wow, you've done all that work. Wow.
Makes me feel bad about me.
Now I need to look at my life. That I think is more of where it's at. It's you're drawing attention to yourself because you're improving yourself, and they're not.
Yeah, and that can be very triggering. But have you guys ever heard of the experiment done with monkeys and like bananas that were kept like really high, and then they got a negative punishment? All these monkeys were kept in the same room with bananas, kept up a ladder, and every time the monkeys would go up the ladder, the people would spray them with a fire hose, and it's awful. Eventually, without having to use the fire hose, anytime a monkey went to climb up there, the other monkeys would beat the monkey that went up there. And eventually,
so even if they replaced the ones that actually experienced being hit by a hose,
they rotated them. Yeah, they rotated them out of there, and eventually no monkeys in the entire place had ever seen what happens why you don't go up there. All they know is you don't go up there because all the other monkeys will drag you off that thing and they'll beat you within an inch of your life, because it's been instilled in them that something negative is going to happen. So
that's just like the monkeys out there on Facebook.
Careful.
Okay.
In the current climate right now. Saying words like that.
Just because I've seen monkeys on Facebook doesn't mean I'm speaking of someone in particular. I mean, geez.
She didn't even say they have on masks.
Now who's supposed to be careful? In any case,
here we go.
Rod wants to know. He has 2 questions now. It's piling up. So first one is, what is IFS? Do you want to answer that, or do you want me to while you're puffing there, miss?
I can answer quickly, and if I don't satisfy the answer, or if I don't give a satisfying answer, you can continue. IFS stands for the Internal Family Systems Model. It's a integrative psychoanalytical method. And I can't remember all the different techniques that it incorporates, but it does incorporate quite a few techniques. It's basically, the concept is all of those thoughts in your head are actually parts of you, and sometimes they vie for control, and there's actually a leader somewhere in there that hasn't been trained properly to master all of these different parts and speak for them as like an ambassador. And so when that whole structure kind of gets interrupted or stopped or damaged, all those parts kind of grow up to be very dysfunctional, and it causes a lot of dysfunction in your psyche and transfers to what you teach in your family, because this all correlates to like your family growing up. So there's a lot of symbology behind it. But yeah, did I answer the question?
I believe so.
Yeah,
lovely.
And then the second question from Rod is, who put the crabs in the dumb bucket? Damn bucket. I know I have an accent.
The crab.
They were lured. They were lured into the bucket, I think.
With promises of payments, one time or
of an education
regular
or something.
Yeah, that's right. Right on.
Okay, but we're supposed to be talking is, how much longer do you need to suffer? Like, why is it that we're continually beating ourselves up? Like, it's not that the monkeys are beating you up. In your own head, you have all the monkeys and the bananas, and your own monkeys are beating you up. Your own parts, your own thoughts, your own dysfunctional habits are pulling you down from every time you try to. Well, I can explain that though. Do you want me to explain that? I'm sure you do.
Please.
So it's a function of the ego. So here's how this works, right? So your ego, it has no ability to tell time. It doesn't really know if you're a child or an adult, right? And so that could be having to do with parts, right? Maybe there's a child part that's in charge right now. Maybe there's an adult part that's in charge right now. But the ego in itself is a function of protection. It wants to take care of you, and it wants to make sure that you couldn't possibly get hurt. And you know how it knows that you're not going to get hurt in a situation? If you've already been through that same exact situation and you didn't get hurt, it's a safe situation. And that comes with all sorts of repercussions, because that's how women from abusive relationships go to another abusive relationship, because it feels familiar, it feels safe, it feels normal. And it's not safe and it's not normal, but your ego doesn't know that the saber-toothed tiger is extinct. It just doesn't know that. It does not have that information. Its only function is to protect you from danger. And its concept of danger is very skewed.
So, there were multiple studies done about animals when in panic mode, when threatened, they always run home. And one of my girls in my support group made just a powerful statement the other day. She said, I'm trying to remember it correctly because it's really important. She said that she had heard it about how be wary if a place feels like home, if home wasn't a very happy place.
Ooh, that's
I know,
profound.
right? I was like, that's fucking powerful. Like, that is right on. And it's something that you don't think of because you're not thinking when you're in that mode. When you are threatened, you're not thinking. You need to have that pre-programmed. You need to know what you're doing. And your body already has a plan in place. It's up to you to decide whether you're going to take that plan or you're going to make up a new one, and you're going to practice and make sure that that new one is in place. Because otherwise, what are you going to do when all your plans fail? You go back to square one. It's fail
Yeah.
safe.
That sounds to me. Oh, go ahead, Deidre.
Oh, that's what I was meaning with the cage, meaning that the cage, that's safety. That's what I was trying to highlight with it. And it's more that a bird in a cage to me is the best, and the best way I can see it. And so even if the cage is unlocked and open, it still needs to, like, the bird's still going to go out and fly around and then still come back. Even if there's no food and water, it's more just like it's learnt to feel safe, that even if it's toxic, abusive, disruptive, and no good, it's still going to be that safeness. And so, yeah, I can understand that with women with abusive relationships, that kind of, I like this person, and then kind of go, just all the red flags kind of just dismantle, because it's just that safety of familiarity. Yeah.
So take that metaphor like to a different level. The safety of us, being in you mentioned the ego earlier, if you would want to use that word. So of being thrown around, of being rooted in our daily life, of being engaged in the waves and the ups and downs of life. Although isn't that what many of us would describe as suffering, and suffering is the definition of suffering. It often uses the word pain. So there's pain in that, and so are we not like seated into that comfortably, although it's suffering, but we seated just like the bird in the cage as well, and even the door is open, and I would argue that the door is open, it was never really closed. Yes. But we have become so comfortable, in the ups and downs of daily lives, of our daily lives, although they make us, they are painful, that we forget that there's an open door, and it always has been open, and all we have to do is really get up and go outside and and jump out and do the leap forward and jump into the uncertainness of freedom.
It's even worse than that, because my second marriage was like the cage, but it was like a golden cage. And at the time I was out in the wild beyond, and I felt lost, and I felt like I didn't have an anchor, and I looked for the cage, and I beelined for the cage, and I put myself in a cage, even though it probably wasn't the right cage for me or the right situation for me. No cage is right for me, but it wasn't the right situation. I looked for safety, for security. There were promises made that made it a no-brainer. Just like Sabri Subi says in his courses, the Godfather promise, make him a promise so big that he cannot refuse. It was like that. And I willingly allowed myself to lower my guard and step into a situation which I probably knew that it wasn't really for me, but it was so safe.
So where'd you learn about this Godfather course?
Oh, that's something that we've been looking at with the Autonomy crowd, Autonomy Unlimited. Sabri Subi's Godfather thing, yeah.
Cool.
Something I pulled from this, especially what Willow said in regard to, like running home. So I think one of the things that we need to do is, if we're going to stop the suffering, is like, what are we going to determine as our home? Where is our home nest, or whatever we want to call it, going to be? And then how do we build that place to the capabilities, or the ideals that we want to have? How do we go about doing that?
So now you're talking about effective self-parenting.
Yeah.
Well,
I
that's
guess.
trying to overcome that. Well, I just wanted to highlight the importance of home and oasis, and I kind of realized this earlier this year, how deeply that means. I kind of never really couldn't really grasp it for myself. I'm like, oh, okay, is it that I have nice things? Is it that I'm supposed to style it the way I'm supposed to on the TV? Is it, I've got nice people around? And it took me a bit, but it's my oasis, because that's my safety. That's where I can do things that I need for my body, that if it was out in the wild, out socially, let's say, it's not so extreme, but it could be. I have somewhere that I can eat, because eating causes me to stop and slow down. I have somewhere I can sleep, and these are all risks. And so to me, an oasis is complete safety. And knowing that for me, kind of internalizing that safetyness of how important having an oasis for yourself, I can go anywhere, because I know that as long as I set that up for myself, I will be okay. It's yeah. So thanks for mentioning that, Mike.
I would just say, you use the word oasis. I think of the word sanctuary is the word that I think of. I like to have a sanctuary where it's like, it just, I don't know. There's a particular, I think it's The Hobbit, is that idea where, there's like nobody attacking you. There's no problems. There's no like cliffs that you can fall down, or like razor sharp rocks that you can, step on, or anything like that. It's just a nice, calm place.
Do you mean the Shire?
Yeah, maybe it is the Shire. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think the
Where the
Shire
hobbits
was as
live?
safe. I think it was the elf place. They seem to really have the sanctuary down, but I'm not sure.
I would ask, where is your home? Like, where's your physical home? Given that we are holistic, multifaceted beings. So from that point of view, where's your physical home? Where does your body feel at home and safe, as you were just describing? Then on a different level, where do you feel at home on an emotional level? Like if you look at your emotional being, like, where's that at home? Where are you rooted? Where's your emotional center? Where's the home there, and do you like that, or would you like to move to somewhere else? And then intellectually also, where's your home? Where's your mind? Does it wander around different places? Is it seated in a place that you like, that you enjoy, that brings you forward, or is it actually hindering you? Is it taking over? And then on a whole different level, like spiritually, where's your home there? For me, like the experience I have when I truly feel at home, it has the least to do with anything, any physical place. So I know from experientially, so not from like a thought or a book I read, but I know from experience that home for me, it doesn't have anything to do like with a physical place or with a house, or with anything physical. And that is a really tremendous experience to feel at home in that all encompassing way that is totally independent of who is around you, or what kind of structure you're moving around, or which part of the planet you're walking at right now.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, I would just say, as a kind of a alternate view, I feel pretty strong about like finding a place that is like the physical location where you feel you know, something like, safety and like all the things that are important to you are being satisfied. The place I live is on the side of a mountain that overlooks the Pacific Ocean, and it's just like, it's a place that when anybody walks in the front door, they're like, oh wow, this is awesome.
I'd
And to
love to see
me,
that one day.
that is
And I totally agree. Like I'm not like countering that in any way. I just see that as different layers. So there's a space for the physical one. There's a one for the emotional one. There's one for spirit. So I don't think that one contradicts the
agreed.
other. It's just different layers, I guess. And each one has their place as well, because we are physical beings, so we need that space as well. And I would totally agree, because I'm like, for me in my life right now, like, it's if I just think like a few years back, it's such a huge difference to be in a place where you just fit, of course you never know for sure, but where you can be much more surer that there's no gunshots being fired outside, there's not anybody jumping around the corner, and so that is such a
Today.
difference that only now I know today. Yeah, that's it's wow, there's a level of that feeling, that subjective feeling of safety, that really it enables like a different way of life, of thinking, of perception of the environment, and that which opens a whole different perspective of life and opportunities as
Well,
well.
if you think about Maslow's pyramid, right, the bottom layer is all about safety, security, and finding a place to eat and to sleep and to do your, like, self care in a way that's not dangerous. And then above that is, self actualization and all of that in the higher levels.
Right. But as a piece of advice for the audience, it's certainly something that whichever way you look at it, whatever you can do to like establish a place that makes you feel, that security, that level of safety, that is that sanctuary or oasis or whatever, whether it be a physical place or a meditation place or something else, something that gives you that kind of thing could be the way to kind of get yourself a base of operations, then to like build yourself from there.
Which will
Yeah.
positively affect the other aspects then, right? Like, I have the wheel again with the hub, like, okay, if the emotional level is sorted out, then you're well on the way to the hub where you have your home in the middle. Then once you have achieved that way, then that will positively affect all the other aspects as well. So whichever one you are seated or you're well on the way, I mean, like, pursue on that, and it will surely positively affect all the other aspects of your being as well.
I
Sorry,
have a
Adrian.
question. It's okay. I have a question for everyone. So, what happens if that gets taken away from you? What happens when you have no oasis? What happens if that you're stripped down to your nakedness and everything's been burnt to the ground? You have nothingness left. You have your naked body. How do you find your oasis then?
You
You have
said it
to
already.
recreate.
Nothing. Nothing.
I
Not a
would
thing.
You,
go ahead.
I've personally like encountered this numerous times. It's a it, it is a recreation. But you haven't lost everything. You have lost physical items. You have lost your physical home. Um, but this is part of like I experienced this when you guys were talking. I was thinking about like what is home to me, and I can't give you like it. Almost made me want to cry because I'm like I really can't give you an answer except for like vague images, like food and like memories. They're just memories of like I imagine like dark wood floors and like kind of like closed in and shadowy and safe. Um, but like I was really struggling with a lot of my issues, and I was really wanting to go home. I, in a home meant where my parents were at that time. I was like, that's what home means right this second. Like it changes, and I was like, I just want to go home. I want to be around the people who have known me forever. It doesn't matter. Like I know what to expect there, even if it's
Okay. So,
like I can handle it.
where?
And
Okay.
well, I
Finish.
was gonna the last thought of it. I was unable to go back. It just wasn't working out, and I was enough of an adult to be like, all right, it's just not working out. But then all of a sudden, I started craving jambalaya, and I started craving all the food that I had like I wanted all the food that we used to cook as a child. And it it was like a strange thing where it's like, okay, you can't go home right now, but you can bring home here. You can recreate, and your mind has to sometimes be left with no other option before it listens to itself. And if you listen to yourself, you'll start to notice like what you really need will kind of bubble up to the surface. Sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, that
You
was
were good.
perfect. You summed it up really well. That's where I was heading towards with it. So when Agnieszka mentioned the hierarchy of needs, so with my therapy, what I deliver is the logo therapy, and that kind of goes on top of the hierarchy of needs, because that's why I put such a stark question out. Is just what if you're stripped of everything and you're just left with your nakedness, because that is entirely what you own. Uh, and you still have your mind. And that's where Willow set her example that you need to transcend your mind to go, it's okay, I'm still me. I'm naked, yeah, but I'm still me. I'm still my personality, and damn it, I'm just going to be as naked as I can be, and I'm going to be fucking happy about it.
So true, because if you say you have nothing, you have no thing. It's not a thing. So if you are not a thing, but if you're something beyond, whatever, the clothes you wear, the cars you drive, the house you're in, and even your physical body, then the real you is also not a thing. So to have no thing is maybe not so far, from the place some could call home. And one thing just came to me, which is another quote, which is from the same guy, Khalil Gibran. Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars. I thought that was fitting for what you just said as well, Deidre.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add, for any of those people that have gone through basic training or military, or any of those kind of training things, that's what they do. They essentially take everything away from you, and you start out completely as, they break you down to the absolute, nothingness, and then they build you back up. And it is one of those circumstances where you really do realize that it's all within yourself. It really is a decision that you make yourself. You have the choices of what you're going to do, and
and see, going with that, those would be the ones that would be able to leave and not have severe mental issues. They've been able to maintain their selfness, their identity. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm gonna, okay, yeah, you've shaved my head bald, you've stripped me naked. But I'm still me. I'm gonna laugh and joke while I'm scrubbing toilets with a toothbrush. It's the ones that kind of just lose themselves in that process, that their mental mind gets broken.
well, there's actually a book called "Be So Good They Can't Refuse You" or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what the end of the title is, but in it they talk about you know not doing the thing that you're most passionate about, but mastering the thing that's in front of you. So whatever your job is, by mastering that, by disciplining yourself to master whatever the tasks are that you have at hand, you start to you really do start to figure out how you can really live life by whatever you're given. And that's I think there's the book Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn is also one that really kind of logically argues for the joy of the joy of actually the work, the task at hand, not like the reward or the punishment of not doing something, but actually doing what the value of that doing is.
When you said being stripped naked, I was imagining like a camping situation. You're in the woods and you're naked. You got nothing, right? Or maybe you're not in the woods. Maybe you're in the outskirts of town, but all you got is what's there, right? And so then, as you're going through your day or fist, you find a stick and, you're making fire with your sticks. Eventually, 3 days later, you light a fire. It's great. And then, so then you have a fire and you have a stick and then you're wandering through the woods and you have a cool stick, right? And then you find a piece of cloth, so that could be your covering or your lean-to, right? And within a few days, you would start to gather things and create a place in the woods that is your home. That will become your home. The weird crooked stick that you found that you really liked, and and the piece of cloth that you're using for a lean-to, and the 3 rocks that you might like grind some grain with, that is your home right there. You might have nothing, but you still have a situation that's a home.
Yeah,
That's exactly
that's
right.
an excellent description.
I got a little distracted by a story that I saw on TV.
You mean you were thinking about what you're going to say while I was talking? Is that what it is?
I was. You called me on it.
That means you weren't listening, but go ahead.
I did hear the story, but I just wanted to like clarify that this has nothing to do with what we were talking about. But it did remind me.
We're supposed to be psychology professionals here. No, I'm just joking. Go.
Well, it was this like Alaskan TV show, something about living in Alaska where there's a bunch of snow. And this lady who, she said that she used to sleep naked. It used to be wonderful. She had a tiny little cot. And she was like, yeah, I used to sleep naked. And then a polar bear came through my wall. And I had to jump up so quickly, throw my boots on, and butt naked, shoot a polar bear from my bed. And I was like, I will admit that I do not have the balls to shoot anyone butt naked. I don't know.
If she was shooting a polar bear from her bed, why did she need to put her boots on first?
I think she jumped into him. Like, I remember her saying that
It's
at
Alaska.
least afterwards she like positioned her stuff to where in one motion she could get out of bed, grab her shotgun, and put her boots on at the same time in case she had to run.
I think there's a law.
That sounds
You're
like
not
a Power
supposed to pick up a
Ranger.
gun totally naked in Alaska. You have to wear at least boots or something.
Oh, it's a German thing, is it?
It gets that
Cultural
cold, the
differences.
ground is like slightly frosted on the inside of the house.
But I think that's how it is in Alaska. Just like a light layer of frost in the winter and everything. No?
Right, we got off topic.
Okay,
The
we're
one
good off
that's
topic.
closest to Alaska.
Hi, Pamela, by the way. Oh, and we got
Yes,
some
off topic.
compliments. We got some compliments about being good. Heather likes her stuff. Merka Bex likes her stuff. Pam always likes her stuff. So, And we also have Rod and a number of other people listening. So it's cool. This is the time to
Lovely.
write us
Welcome.
comments.
Yay.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Yes,
Really
please
appreciate it.
comment. We need more comments.
Yeah, we like comments because then the powers that be show us to more people.
I'm so glad
And
to
you
know that
guys
these
can
guys are
kind of
not
keep us
suffering.
on.
What? What'd you say, Dennis?
I'm so glad to know that these guys are not suffering with us.
They're enjoying it. They're still here. They like us. Apparently, we're good.
So
Strong souls.
Agnieszka, you asked the question at the beginning of the show. We never got your answer. How did where did you start self-parenting and taking responsibility for yourself?
I didn't like the parenting that I received. I mean, there were some things that were really, really great about my parenting, but there were things that I didn't jive with my personality, my morals, my judgments. You know what I mean? I've always, even as a small child, I always knew who I was in a way. I don't know how that makes sense, but like, I remember arguing with a priest about, no, that's not true. Jesus wouldn't be mad at people because they didn't get christened. That doesn't make sense at all. You know what I mean? He left everybody equally. If you didn't get to see the priest before you died, it's still cool. He's cool with it, really. Trust me. And so I think that it's the self-parenting thing. It's actually something I came up with myself. I didn't realize that there was a study or a school of thought of that. But it is kind of obvious, right? As soon as your parents are not able to take care of you, to create the situation that you need to thrive, right? Somebody has to take over that role. The inner child, that there's a part of us that's always 4 years old, and that part needs somebody to take care of them. You know, I mean, think about an adult who doesn't have effective self-parenting. Are they eating potato chips? Are they 400 pounds sitting on the couch, watching stupid TV shows, shopping online for useless things that have no, intrinsic value. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not saying I never bought anything that doesn't have intrinsic value, but what is it that what are we if we're not self-parenting? How far do we need to roll down that hill before we stand up and say, okay, enough's enough?
Some people never get to that point, unfortunately, which is sad.
But think about the quality of life. It's like hedonism, right? Okay, so I used to say I was a hedonist because I really like pleasure, and I'm not talking about you, Brandon. I really like pleasure, and I really like to, I like to eat cake. I like to swim in the cool water of a lake. I like all these things that feel good, right? But it's not hedonistic to eat the whole chocolate cake. Because if you eat the whole chocolate cake, even though you're allowed to, you're going to have a really bad stomachache. Food's not going to taste good for like the next 24 to 48 hours. There are going to be negative consequences of eating that whole chocolate cake. So I think the effective self-parenting steps in before you eat the whole chocolate cake. Because otherwise it's masochism. Eating the whole chocolate cake is not hedonism, it's masochism. There's a difference.
Are you talking about...
What you were just saying. Go ahead, Will.
I was going to ask, are you talking about eating a whole chocolate cake in one sitting or one day? Because those are two different time frames. Only one of which I am guilty of.
Breakfast.
To talk about chocolate cake, I feel so hungry right now.
If you
I haven't eaten dinner.
If you ate the whole chocolate cake in one day, would you feel good afterwards? Like, would you sleep well that night? Like, I mean, how big is the chocolate cake too? I mean, if it's like a little individual chocolate cake, I'm sure I could eat it in one day. But if it's like a 36-incher,
three tier.
That's
I
right.
mean, I'm sorry, but who buys a cake that big just for themselves?
There
I mean,
would be
I'm just talking regular birthday cake style. Like, I feel
Hey,
way
if you're a
less guilty
hedonist,
about this now.
Who knows? You can do anything.
Seeking pleasure is very important, but not too much.
Agnieszka, how did you come to that conclusion? It's like, how did you find out that, the chocolate thing and that it was going to hurt your belly? Was it like theory, knowledge, or you read in a book, or did you go through it?
I don't really like chocolate cake, honestly, but
What was an example of anything?
I've been using it as an example for years, but I have had too many cookies or too many cakes as a child, and I have had stomachache from it. Like, during Christmas or Easter or something where all people do is eat and eat and eat. I have had experiences where I was not feeling so great from self-indulgence. So I can totally relate to that on a personal level.
Because I think you just perfectly described the meaning of what Jiddu Krishnamurti meant when he said, pain itself destroys pain. Suffering itself frees man from suffering. I feel that that's exactly what you just described with the chocolate cake. So
Explain.
You eat the chocolate cake and you feel pain after and you suffer because of that. And the process that's been triggered through that is what in the end will lead you to a higher understanding or to higher knowledge. Which can lead you to free yourself from
to eating moderate amounts of chocolate cake in the future, as opposed to excessive amount. Igor says that he eats a whole chocolate cake by himself. So Willow, you don't have to feel bad.
I'm glad I'm in good company. Yay! So I actually just realized where I may have learned that lesson, because when Dennis was asking you, like, when did you learn that lesson? I thought of the time that I snuck into my grandmother's fridge, like I always did. It wasn't even sneaking. I just went in there and got in there and ate an entire bag of semi-sweet dark chocolate chips.
Whoa.
And I knew I was not feeling well, but I was like, I felt worse. It's okay. And it wasn't until I was throwing up on my grandmother's carpet and she realized that I was throwing up chocolate chips and what I had done. She didn't even punish me. She was like, I bet you feel real bad right now, don't you? And I was like, yep. I didn't even want to move. I was like, I just want to take a nap. I'm done with this. So I guess I learned that if you're not vomiting and unable to move, then you're fine.
Sounds like a great lesson.
Well,
Probably not.
Agnieszka, you brought up earlier, that like in a lot of cases we suffer, because we're blind to a lot of things, and in a lot of cases we're immature in a lot of areas, and I think I certainly feel that about myself, that there's areas that I'm a child. I just don't, I really haven't advanced myself. I think of myself as an adult in other areas, but there are areas that I just haven't gained maturity because, maybe it's like the emotional maturity that I desire, but it's because of some of the blindness and maybe some of the trauma that I have that really prevent me from like seeing, like what Dennis pointed out, that these are pain points. I know I feel the pain, but I don't understand where the pain is coming from.
Yeah, so there are two things. I'm just going to address it quickly, then you guys can go. So there are two things that are at play. So one is, if there was a traumatic event in your childhood that caused these particular thoughts, you might still be thinking of them as a 5-year-old or as a 6-year-old, right? You may be an adult in many other areas of your life, but in this one area, you might be stuck at a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. So if you notice that, and also notice, oh, hi Deirdre, welcome back. And also notice if your languaging is at a certain age, you can always tell what the language of the person is. Like when your thoughts are coming into your mind, you can feel like if you're sounding like a 4-year-old or a 10, like who would say that? Who would say that sentence? A 4-year-old, a 10? How old would a person be if they were to say that sentence, right? And the second thing is more pervasive. It's like throughout our society, we're living in a poorarchy, right? Poorarchy, which is a Latin word for being ruled by children, right? Like if you look around at politicians and people, people in high places, a lot of them, they have the maturity of a 5 or 10 or 15-year-old. They do not have, and I'm not just talking about any specific particular person. I'm talking overall throughout all the countries in all the world, like not just in America, not just any specific person, but just rulers, even the way they speak to us, politicians speak. What is that? It's a childhood game. It's not a real conversation. They don't have any real information to convey to us. They're just talking to talk and then they're walking away. I've done that as a child while playing games. So how is childish behavior showing up in the world around us?
So I wanted to add to what you said. I agree when you're like, or when you said like they'll use the language of a young child, they'll act like a young child, they'll think like a young child, they'll speak like a young child. That's all because that part, when it's blended with you, you experience things as a young child. You're not experiencing things with the capabilities and the toolbox of a 20-something or 40-something, 60-something-year-old person. You're actually triggering neural pathways that trigger various flashbacks, especially if you've had a traumatic event. And you will experience the world as if you were that age. It's incredibly strange, and it's really scary sometimes because there will be like The Body Keeps the Score talks about it, where a guy's girlfriend had made a sexual suggestion in a playful manner, and she also stuck her finger in his mouth, like playing, and like grabbed his like mouth, and he freaked out and said, "If you ever fucking do that, I will kill you." Like screamed it at her, and then both of them just dissolved into tears and like cradled on the floor, like because they didn't know what to do. When they experienced that, they reverted back to really young, both of them. Even though the girl didn't have, I don't think she had experienced traumatic, or she had traumatic experiences in her past, but still, like threatened, they both literally regressed. And I've seen many clients who, when they open up, their language changes, their whole experience changes. So I have to change my tone of voice. I have to change how I'm talking, because at that point, I'm not talking to an adult. I'm talking to this part who is maybe 3 or 4 years old. Maybe they don't know how to talk. maybe they're just showing you images and emotions, and yeah.
Yeah, and it's important to speak to them at that level, especially even in relationships. Say your husband is having a meltdown and he sounds like a 5-year-old. Like, you need to really speak to that person at that level, at that moment. They will revert to an adult. It's not that they are a child. It's just that something got triggered that got them into this place where they're acting as a child. They're reverted to their childish being. By the way, Eric clarified that it's puer archi, Puer archi.
Thank you, Eric.
Is that a French pronunciation, like poo?
No, it's a Latin word. It's a Latin word. In Latin, we pronounce every letter very clearly.
So, okay,
I know enough French to understand that dig.
Go ahead, Deidre.
Over my head.
He says puer is Latin for child. I'm supposed to say that. So go ahead, Deidre.
So, okay, suffering. So for me, kind of suffering is, it's just life. Life has, being born is suffering. That's just life. So how would you, what would you guys consider as overcoming that? So with me, I teach responsibility. That is, so in line with freedom is responsibility is on the other side, and taking responsibility for your own suffering. What would you guys personally do if you're stuck in a situation where you just realized you just got triggered and you completely humiliated yourself, and now you've got all that suffering that comes with the humiliation? How do you overcome that? What responsibility do you take on for the self-care?
I would try to cut right through and say, who is suffering? Who is the one suffering right here? Who is it? Is it this image of whoever I was, whichever role I was playing there? Was a friend or a party or as a father? So it's already a role. Okay, is that role that's suffering, and like I'm supposed to be this and that, I'm supposed to be like that, and oh my God, everybody's looking at me, or whatever the situation is. But who is that really? Is that really who I am? Or is that just, the role that I assumed in that very moment? And if it's just a role, then, it's not my true self. So it's not really me who is suffering. So where's that pain? How does it feel? How big is it? How small is it? What happens if I look at it from that perspective? What happens right there? How is it going to look in 5 years? Or is it going to look in 10 years? Or I actually can imagine that, 10 years from now, I'm going to sit around the campfire with my family and laugh about the same situation that feels so disturbing right now. So those would be some of my first reactions, I guess I'd have.
Yeah, those are some of the most powerful things. What is it going to matter tomorrow? Is it going to matter in 10 days? Is it going to matter in 10 years? Because a lot of the things that we're really, really upset about, if we look at it from the perspective of time, 10 years from now, maybe it won't. Like 10 years from now, I said a bad word during dinner, or like 10 years ago, I said a bad word during dinner and I mispronounced it and it was a swear word, and everybody looked at me.
Yeah, but when people are in intense states, and let's say they're suffering from years of all of this and it's built up into anxiety, they looking that far into the future is beyond them. That's way too much. Sometimes
it's impossible at that point.
Some people can't even look within the next minute.
But this is an actual example from my life. Like, I actually did, when I was 14 years old, say something bad at a dinner. Well, not bad, I just mispronounced the word. And I literally, for 3 days, several times a day, I was like, oh my God, how could I be so stupid? Oh my gosh, I totally embarrassed. My parents were probably ashamed of me. And everybody was looking at me. And I said that word in front of everybody. I didn't even mean it. If I meant it, it would be a different thing. But I didn't mean it, and it caused untold suffering. And had I been able to at the time go, and then now, so when it's an embarrassing situation, now I'm like, okay, those people don't really care about me. Like literally, if this would have happened now, I'd be like, okay, those people didn't notice. They don't care about it. They probably won't even remember it tomorrow. Tomorrow, they're not even going to remember that we had steak, let alone what I said. Right? You know what I mean? But
That makes
that's the self-parenting that I have to do when I am trying to get myself out of that situation, you know?
Very cool. What about you, Willow?
A question I ask is, what does that mean to you, or what do you think that means? And this is about like let's take Agnieszka's scenario. You said a word that you didn't mean to say. I'd be like, Agnieszka, I can see that you're upset right now. What do you think this means? What do you think this means you have done? Or, you know, there's a lesson. And a lot of times, the more you think about it, the more you realize it has nothing to do with what actually happened. It has to do with what you think that is going to cause. What does that mean is going to happen?
Is that how you approach the situation?
I try to. Wait. For me, I'm not going to be so arrogant and lie. I'm not good at it. My go-to whenever I realize that I'm doing that, even if I don't want to, even if I want to be like, you know what? You're completely right and I am wrong. Like, I would love to be that person, but I kind of just gloss over it. I'm like, that didn't happen. Psych, it didn't happen. So therefore,
By the way, let's bring psychosomatic therapy into this for a second. If you notice Willow's body shape, she's a skinny person with not much flesh. And that in psychosomatic therapy would mean that she's prone to escapism, right? So she just described when she makes a mistake, she escapes from the mistake and she goes into the mind thing, right?
Yeah.
And then for me, I'm a little bit chubby, right? So that means I hold on to things. And I mull over them and I keep them inside me. And they all live inside. All my mistakes live in my fat. Right? So Pam wants to know what Dennis is thinking.
Okay.
Because he looks so pensive. You forgot that everybody's on screen at the same time now, hey? Didn't you?
No,
you can't hide
not.
anymore, man.
If you see,
He tried.
I was thinking along the lines of
Igor thinks you're visualizing German chocolate cake, which is Igor's favorite.
Oh, man, that is a good one.
that went
Some
down
fond
the belly.
memories of that.
And Black Forest, isn't that in Bavaria anyway?
It is, of course.
Please,
the
let's
Schwarzwald.
stop talking about cake. I'm high and hungry.
I'm hungry too.
You have to
Mike.
try Bienenstich. You haven't tried any cake if you have not tried Bienenstich, which literally means bee sting. It has like vanilla pudding and like almonds on top and stuff. Anyway.
I can't wait to try it. Next time I'm visiting your house, I'm trying that Bienenstich.
He's being
I was thinking along the lines of
Oh, I'm finishing.
go on.
I'm finishing. Mike, how do you handle...
Wait.
But hang on, he hasn't
Dennis,
answered
though.
yet. He just talked about cake.
Yeah.
He did answer. He was the first one to answer.
Did he? Oh, but Pam wanted to know what he was thinking. Okay, hang
Yeah.
on. Fine.
You
Let's
guys
Got to answer Pam's question.
go to Michael and then we'll get Dennis to answer Pam's question. She can wait.
I was going to say, I think there's a couple things that you can do, and I think it really is like an advantage that we bring to the table, and that is, be proactive about kind of creating a circumstance or creating training yourself to react in a certain way when those things come up. So that's certainly one of the things that, working with somebody else, talking through situations that you've experienced in the past, and then kind of figuring out what is the best way to go about that. I feel like, I have grown so much, having this opportunity to talk to you guys every day, because I know I've got 5 or 4 other perspectives on a regular basis that really kind of makes it a lot more, enlightens me in a lot of different areas. So certainly, number one, be proactive. And then number 2 is like, in regard to being proactive as well, is find the people that you trust, and have a conversation with them, or just kind of like pull back in the situation where you feel like you're getting out of control, and just save it for that time when you can talk to somebody that you trust and say, hey, this is what happened. What should I do? Should I apologize? Should I do this? Should I, write write a letter? Should I get in my journal? What are the things that I can do? And there's a ton of things that you can do, I think.
The journaling, that's what you do. If you're in
Obviously.
in a situation where you get into and you walk away and you journal it out. I like that. I'll talk about myself now. So we all know what happened with me. We all know how I handle humiliation. Just go back a couple of episodes to the Mother's Day special. You can see that. So I kind of went to I got to a point where I'm just like, no, that my brain's just like, no, that it's too much, and I'm just like, I just crashed emotionally, and I self-talk to myself. I talk to myself. So I used to be afraid of doing that. Until I had this really awesome lady. She's just like, no, I talk out loud to myself. It means that you're sane. She goes, if you're not talking out loud to yourself when you make mistakes, then you're just going to internalize it, and it's just going to loop. And so, yeah, that's why and you guys said to me, you guys, no, you handled that really well. We heard what you're saying. I'm like, oh, crap. I said that out loud in front of everybody on the internet. Okay. Oh, well, it's done.
I've done that before with our podcast when I was like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But the crowds are clamoring to hear from Dennis. So I'm going to like switch it to Dennis now because there are people beating our windows.
Let's get him on the full picture.
Oh gosh, please.
I can take a break.
No. We switched the format. Now they can see us all.
So Deidre, a few minutes ago, you were talking about, but what happens if, there's people who are so overwhelmed in their situation because they would have years or a lifetime of stuff piled up and of suffering. So, it would be really hard for them to kind of cognitively, come into that place and think ahead 5 years and how it's going to be and, turn it around so easy. So I thought about, a fact for me, at least from my perspective that life really seems to be an intricate feedback mechanism that is built in on all levels for our being. So if I notice, let's say negative or thoughts that are wearing me down or that are putting me down, or emotions, they keep on coming up, or physical pain that keeps on coming. So I tend to see that as a feedback from life. So there's and not even to say it's good or it's bad or positive or negative, but it's like, okay, there's pain, there's suffering. So that is I tend to see that as a signal. So there's some kind of feedback. So I did something and that caused me pain on whichever level it is. If it's like thought patterns or if it's on a emotional pain or even if it's physical pain. So it's like, so it triggers my curiosity, or train myself to be curious about it. It's like, oh, what really brought that about and where does that come from? And then to inquire about it, or when did it start, under what circumstances, what was I thinking, what was I doing, whom was I with, in which place was I? And if it keeps on coming up, then it's like I try to get curious about it. It's like, okay, because I want to know who I am, what's going on, and I want to be able to read those signals that life is giving me. So if even my physical being is like a biofeedback mechanism, then it's like, okay, what happens if I eat this? What happens if I work out like that? What happens if I'm around these people? And then just to be aware of how that affects my being in the moment. And then I feel even if you're overwhelmed, by years or decades or a lifetime of suffering, so to say, then that is something, to just be in the moment and perceive, what's happening right now. Okay, I'm thinking these thoughts, and what's happening to my body, what's happening to my, to my feeling. Okay, I'm eating this right now, what's happening right now. So that's something, right here in the moment, right here and right now. You wouldn't have to do any difficult cognitive exercises or so. I think ahead is just to to be right here with your body and to recognize that the state that you're in right now is a result of all the moments of beingness that you had before, and that in that moment there lies the possibility of turning everything around. Because how long does it take you to think a different thought? How long does it take you to do things differently, or to to adjust to a different kind of feeling? So one for one somebody it might be really difficult. It might take a few days or a few months, but maybe you find that thinking differently is actually you can do that in this very moment, and that's already a start. And if you take it one step at a time, then wherever you find the easiest or the most the closest step or the easiest step to, just take that one, whichever it is, on whichever level you can do that. Maybe it's like a half an hour workout, or maybe it's like to talk to somebody, or maybe it's like to change the tone of your voice. But all of those things are changes already. And once you change the pattern that you have adapted and acquired over your lifetime, then you must, logically, you must get a different feedback from life as well. And whether it's better, that's for you to determine. But it's like it's like poking and seeing, which way to go and which posture to take, and then measuring the feedback, and then just moving that direction where you feel, things are getting better.
What I really liked what you were saying, Dennis, was just taking it in small steps. That's how the bird gets out of the cage. It doesn't kind of just go, oh my gosh, the cage is open, finally. It doesn't happen that way, unfortunately. And
even if it did, oftentimes if you make a big, huge jump, even like from a workout background, like from physical training, it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do this and make this huge effort like for a week. And then a lot of people who do that and make like effort of doing it like a sudden change, then if you come back after a month or after a half year, they're right back where they were. So they jump out of the cage with once, but then they fall right back as well, because they're frightened and they didn't get adjusted to the new environment.
That's right. It takes progress. If you're just going to flood somebody just once, it's not going to work, because then they're just going to go back to normal. If you're going to get permanent change, it has to be you just have to keep going with it.
30 days, 30 to 50 days.
Well, there are other techniques though, because if you group together, if you do something in a group exercise, there's a lot more evidence that suggests that you can go a hell of a lot farther, with
Yes.
the group kind of supporting you. So in circumstances when you wanted to do that, you'd want to make the break together,
Yeah, that's right. And that is that's that whole social aspect of it all.
Heather said you just go back to it. If you fail, you just go back into it.
Yeah, that's another thing is, certainly confronting the fear of failure, because that is one that is also kind of a misconception that a lot of people have, is that failure is, something to be shamed for, when the reality is it's just a learning opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
It's a signpost. It's pointing you in the direction, right? So like any kind of emotional, see, that's the thing with people. People think that emotions are reality, right? Oh, I'm feeling fear, or I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling this. This is my reality. But it is really a signpost, a reaction to something, right? So I'm feeling fear. Why am I feeling fear? How am I feeling fear? You know what I mean? What is there to fear? Often we're fearing the saber-toothed tiger, but the saber-toothed tiger has been extinct for thousands of years, millions of years even. I don't know. I don't really know when he went extinct, but at some point,
Thousands of years, I think, probably closer.
Right. So the fear of failure, that kind of, I feel like I'm still overcoming that for me personally. But
is it a fear of failure or fear of success?
Fear of failure, because I've been beaten so many times with a stick. Fear of failure.
Because a lot of people fear success more than failure.
Well, and that's that crab in the bucket thing, that like shame is one of the things that, that really steer a lot of people from doing anything that the crowd won't like. And so, it is very difficult to overcome shame when people,
and the monkeys will beat you up.
Throws that at you. Yeah.
The monkeys will just beat you up if you step out of line. To get the bananas up the ladder. Those monkeys.
Can we stop with the food? Come on, guys. I'm so hungry.
It's like all food all night.
It's about
I still haven't
suffering.
even made dinner.
This
I still have to
show
cook dinner.
is about suffering. You're suffering, then we've achieved the goal.
Suffering with hunger right now. Oh my god.
So I was gonna comment on what Heather said in the chat about like you go back into it. I encountered this so many times with my clients. I had one specific client who had a part who was kept in a cage. And then he started being like, well, why are they kept in a cage? We need to get them out of the cage. And we got them out of the cage, got him having, dinner with everybody, sitting down, let all the other parts know that he was part of the family now. And the next morning, we were having a conversation, like a friendly conversation out in the backyard. And I just started asking questions. I was like, where is that part that we talked to yesterday? And he goes, he's back in the cage. I don't know how he got back in the cage. And I'm like, all right, we're going to have to do this numerous times. That was like my first encounter of like, oh, you can't just have this epiphany and then fix it. You're going to revert back into what you know and what you feel comfortable with until you have a reason to change.
And once you have that reason to change, and then, because that's also a possibility, because you have cases where people make, tremendous leaps forward and stick with it, or where, they're able to turn around their life, like that seemingly. But there's possibilities for that. And it's when that moment is there, and you're kind of shedding, the old skin, like a snake, shedding the skin or the caterpillar, then you just leave that behind because you don't need it again. And it's just a different reality then. So that's also a possibility.
Yeah. How do you accept that new reality and not revert back?
Well, once you
very hard.
As a caterpillar spread your
the butterfly
wings and fly, then you wouldn't have, you won't have no use for the, how you call that? The cocoon?
Cocoon.
Cocoon. You wouldn't want to crawl back, once you have spread your wings and so why crawl back?
Well, I think that's kind of like a ritual, right? To some degree, a lot of things, and certainly a lot of human things in the past, and certainly I think with men, rituals have been a way to kind of change their mentality and kind of create the circumstance where they can accept themselves as something else or something more. So and that's another thing, is creating a ritual.
And there's a lot of suffering, because you mentioned men associated with that traditionally, the becoming a man, from boyhood to basically manhood, the kind of rituals and initiation rites that have been traditionally, that men did undergo or still undergo are, those are, some of them are quite gruesome, and they're associated with a lot of pain and a lot of suffering.
But we do need the ceremony in order to progress. I think I read in a book that's one of the issues with our society, because we've taken away a lot of the ceremonies that mark the ages, like from baby to child, from child to teenager, from teenager to adult. Used to be ceremonies and actual things you stepped over and went into the next stage, and then you knew that you dress differently, you act differently, you know what I mean? And in our society, we don't have that anymore.
Well,
so it's hard to tell.
Replace that with the government age restrictions,
But that's not a ceremony, right? It's not something that moves you in the heart. And I'm not talking you should like put hooks in your back and drag yourself behind a horse. that was an actual option for adulthood for men in some societies. But, not necessarily that, but something that'll like, even an overnight camping trip where, older men take a younger man and talk to him about being an adult. And from now on, do some kind of a ceremonial ritual.
Well, like the Boy Scouts, they used to have these little patches, right? Or I guess they still do. But, they have patches for all these different skills and abilities that they take on. And then, different levels. Those are really rituals that are essentially how they see themselves as becoming more capable.
But with the Girl Scouts these days, I mean, I volunteered with the Girl Scouts a few times, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to earn my badge, It was like, yeah, I'll show up, I'll get a badge for it. And they're all sitting around doing almost nothing. They're supposed to be doing this activity, and they don't really care. And it's such a complacency,
Yeah, well, that's what happens.
It's because they've lost the meaning of it all. So that once something's meaningless, then what's the point to it all?
Right.
Sorry.
No, you go.
I thought you were finished. Sorry.
Yeah.
I had a nice experience for that kind of growing up. So because I wasn't raised in a particular religious way or within Christianity or any any organized form of religion. But then still there was this, like all the other people were gonna get like Christian. Then so the religious religions often have that ingrained within themselves, that kind of ritual of, passing through childhood and becoming an adult, or like an adult member of their congregation. And so what happened when for me was that it's called Jugendweihe. Jugend means youth, and Weihe, consecration, way, dedication, votively, I'm not even sure what the English word is, consecration, but that's still like a Christian. But Jugendweihe, that was a kind of ritual that would have been actually like done by the state in Eastern Germany, when Germany still was separated. So, and that was like an official rite of, welcoming the youths into adulthood. And after Germany was united, supposedly, so this kind of ritual was offered as an alternative to the Catholic or the Protestant rituals that the church would do. And it was really nice, because over the duration of my, even like a year before that final ceremony, we would have, like, I think it was like bi-weekly or like monthly meetings, like within a group of youths, boys and girls actually, and we would organize ourselves with some adults and do like different trips, and talk about certain topics, and just go to different places and just be together as a group of youths in the same age and have different experiences together. And that was really nice. And then in the end there would be a celebration which didn't have any religious connotation, but which had like families there, which had like a celebrative character. And that was actually a really nice experience, because it allowed me it allowed us basically to merge as a group, and to also talk about those topics, and what does it mean to become a man and to become a woman, and to live through that kind of year together as a group. And that was still, I appreciate that. I have very fun memories of those days.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. I can kind of grasp the concept a lot more now. I'm just relating it to my oldest. So when she was 4, I would start setting her more responsibilities, putting your dishes in the sink, let's say, for example. And her answer kept coming back, I don't want to be 4 anymore, Mummy.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get that whole ceremony aspect of it, that, okay, now you're an adult, you have certain expectations and responsibilities that are very important for our community. It makes the grieving process of I'm not a child anymore a lot special, a lot more acceptable.
I can see a lot of value in the parent, the mother or the father actually taking on the son or the daughter and initiating them into the next phase of their life as well. So I can see a lot of value in that as well.
Thank you. It's cool.
So I really have appreciated this conversation. I think we're closing in on the end of the show, but do we want to go around and talk about what each person found most valuable out of this conversation?
I keep thinking about Anthony DeMello and his lecture, which is still on YouTube, about I don't want to wake up. It's come up to my mind a few times, and the whole thing, how nobody wants to wake up, but we got to wake up. You got to wake up because you're the teacher in the school. I don't want to wake up. I don't want to go to school. You got to wake up because you're the principal.
Yeah. Cool.
But make sure you want to wake up. And especially if you want to wake up somebody else, make sure they
What if I want to be a baby for the rest of my life?
Well, this is what the other conversation I have with my kids as well. If you want to be the baby, that's fine. Babies don't play PlayStation. Babies kind of just sit in the corner. You don't get to have toys.
Oh, sure. She gets the food.
Oh,
there's the cake.
Put it in. What'd you get?
Dinner.
I called that one.
Told you. I thought it was me too. We called.
Oh, you guys are funny. I thought my mom said she wasn't making dinner today. Thank you very much, Mom. Oh, and I get a fork too. Thank you so much.
And Heidi Yagodova.
Oh, wow, cool. Thank you very much. I like you.
I have a final question to ask. Are you guys ready for it?
Okay, let's
Go for it.
And it's again from Yudu Krishnamurti, and I find it very fitting. It goes like that. And the point is it possible for the mind to be totally free from suffering and yet not become indifferent, callous, irresponsible, but to have that passion, the intensity, the energy that freedom brings, freedom from suffering?
I'm sorry, Dennis. I didn't hear you. I was too busy
Sorry, we
making
were having a
faces.
silent war. I was like, stop it. Stop putting
Not
that fruit
suffer.
up on the camera. I
Go ahead.
apologize
You
for
want
our
to repeat
audience.
the
We're
question?
horribly off
All
track.
right, I repeat the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Yidi Krishnamurti asks, and the point is it possible for the mind to be totally free from suffering and yet not become indifferent, callous, irresponsible, but to have that passion, the intensity, the energy that freedom brings, freedom from suffering?
Freedom from suffering, yes.
Is that a possibility?
Yes.
What do you think?
I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah,
think so.
Go ahead.
I don't think we're ever free from suffering. We still have to suffer the consequences of our actions. That's what one of the current definitions, Agnieszka, I hate you so much. I saw you put that in your mouth. And now I've lost the train of thought. I'm so hungry.
Suffering. You were saying we can't
Oh.
go without suffering.
It means to
can't go-
endure.
See,
So-
Go
Go ahead.
No, well, I just have a different opinion. I say yes, we can. We can just. It's doing it in spite of the suffering. That's different to kind of having the suffering just beating you down. That's where
Absolutely. And I like that distinction a lot better than we're not completely free from suffering, because it's just going to come back. We just have to know how to handle it and how to deal with it.
I say yes and no. It depends who is asking. If it's that self that is asking, like that identifies still with the physical form and all the other forms of our being that is not truly us, then no, it's not possible. But if you're seated in your true, in your beingness, in your true self, say yeah, then it's not a possibility, it's a reality already. That's possible to be experienced.
Yeah, I would relate it to kind of the idea of us, being birds under the water, in my little thing I'm drawing a little while back, can we fly all the time when we're living under the water? No. But once we get above and we can, in the air, if we're birds, we can fly. We may not fly forever, but we can fly a hell of a lot of the time. And it's the same as asking, like, can we live a life without any problems? Probably not. But if we encounter a lot of problems and we build up our skills and we start to learn how to solve problems, more than likely those problems become less and less and less. May not be perfect, but will be pretty damn close.
Or they cease to appear like problems and they begin to appear like opportunities.
Yeah.
And I just want to tell everybody that me getting dinner is not my normal reality.
Where's mine to know?
This is just a special thing because I'm moving away in about a month, and so my mom is trying to give me extra love now, more love than normal. And Eric's away, so it's easy to feed me.
I'm only jealous because I don't have my mom to send
Next
me
door.
food. She just sends me
Yeah.
pictures, and then she's like, haha.
I didn't for
Don't you wish
years,
you had it?
I've only lived next door to my mom for less than a year, and now I'm moving, so, we'll see.
Take advantage of the time you have.
I know I can get the love, and especially when I was in Quebec, I was so alone and away from everybody, and now I get, I get so much love. I don't even
There's
care about
nothing
the
like
food,
mom's
it's the
food.
love. Right?
You think I could try a piece of your love?
Thank you.
That's the 4 C's.
Share the love.
The cooking, the cooking part of the 4 C's.
What's the 4 C's?
Connection, contribution, I can't think of the other-
Collaboration.
Collaboration, I was going to say, probably.
Maybe.
I never heard of
and,
the 4
and
C's.
cooking. The 4 C's to happiness, I think is what it's called.
Nice.
Nice.
Well, you guys make me pretty happy, and I love this podcast, and I love all the listeners that show up. But even if we had no listeners, I would still do it because it's still fun and it still teaches me new things and gets me deeper into my own psyche, and I think it's awesome.
Can
Oh,
we
you
go
mean
back?
we have
As
listeners?
well.
I thought we were
I'll
just
chime in.
meeting and chatting.
You mean there are listeners? Shit. But hang on, next week we're going to be talking about grief, right? And overcoming grief. And grief doesn't have to be when somebody died.
Grief, loss, and suffering.
But
It's
it
gonna
could be
my-
just grief from like losing your favorite phone, or grief from like breaking your favorite heels. Is that grief?
Yep.
That
That's
could be
The
grief.
plate being empty.
Tell us
Grief
more,
could be-
Deidre.
Not
Yeah,
having
grief-
a plate, not having a mom next door.
There's 3 different types of grief. I can't remember the ones off the top of my head, but I know there's grief by, there's things like grief by association. So things like a father was going to was seeing me, and he was worried that he had this child rock up on his doorstep because the mother died, and he didn't know that he was the biological father. So he gets an 8-year-old at his doorstep, pretty much, and agrees to raise him. So he goes to counseling, and he was distraught, completely distressed, because he never wanted children because he had such a terrible father, a very abusive father. And so his grief was from that he would instill that in his own son. But that wasn't the reality of the situation. So yeah, I'll be unpacking different types of grief, loss, and suffering from my perspective of how I do therapy. Interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah, we're definitely looking
Nice.
forward to that.
Yes.
Actually, Heather commented and said, "Ooh, that's gonna be a good one." So we can count on her.
She'll be
Thank you.
here.
More skills to learn to solve the problems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think. Oh wait, there
Time
was
to
a
go?
fallacy. We had a
Is
fallacy.
there a fallacy?
Yeah, I'm just gonna show it on the screen really quick. So, you guys
Okay.
ready? Fallacy of the week. The queen told the curious little crane that she could have jam every other day, but never today, since today was not any other day. So what does that
Fallacy
mean?
is
What was it? Equivocation?
Yeah, I think so. Equivocation.
It was basically using words in a creative way to not
not deliver.
deliver.
It's
Basically.
changing the definition
Of
of
the
the
same
very
word.
words that you're using. So you use the word twice in a sentence, but the first time implies a different meaning to the word than the second time you use the word. So
Willow,
you don't
the
actually
fallacy
get.
expert.
Am I?
Can you show
Today
me
you are.
in like a normal conversation? How would that go in a normal conversation? I'm thinking of jam. Hey, I've got this really awesome posh jam right now, but I don't know.
I've got some. It'd be like I've got some really good jam. I'm selling some jams, and you come up and ask me, and you're like, "Oh, how much are you selling your jams?" And be like, "Oh, I don't have that jam. I don't have the jam that you want."
I have another jam.
Well, maybe not. That's not a very good example. See, I'm really good at picking out fallacies, but I'm not good at finding examples of them.
Wow. You
But
got me
it's
there.
basically
like that.
politician speak.
Sorry for putting that on you.
Yeah, it's the politicians.
You're
thing,
good.
Politicians
the
speak.
promises that never come through. We're
Like-
gonna give you health care, but just apply for it and you'll have health care.
Except for you're not gonna have healthcare. Really, it's just gonna be killed. We're gonna call. Oh, you know what? I have a perfect example. It's the Canadian government relief fund for businesses, right? So COVID relief fund, right?
Uh-oh.
It's a
we
Oh
relief.
go.
no, you
fund.
said the word.
Oh shit. It's a relief fund for businesses, so they get up to $40,000. But if they don't pay it back within a year, they have to pay interest for it. Do you see what I did there? Do you see
What a
what I
relief.
did there? Yeah. So that was the relief, and there were like qualifications that you had to like meet in order to qualify for this. But even just that wording itself, relief fund for businesses. If you don't pay it in a year, you have to pay interest. Pay it back.
It's like how they changed the word theft into taxes.
You're not supposed to say that either. Jeez, who is trying to get us banned today? My God.
I didn't say the bad word. I just said truth.
You didn't say the bad word. I'm eating broccoli.
Truth is very bad. Are we still allowed to say that?
I can't win for losing.
All right. Well, I'll remind everybody we're on Mondays and Thursdays, 7:05 p.m. Eastern time, every Monday and Wednesday. And I also want to add that I'm going to be actually interviewing Agnieszka in about 20 minutes on my leadership ethics and organization interview. So are you prepared for that, Agnieszka?
Yes, I am, except for I have to have dinner first.
Okay. All right. Well, we got 20 minutes. But
all our audience can see is the picture that you have up, Agnieszka.
Oh, oops. Oh, look at that. I messed up. The fallacy of the week. There we go. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, and I'll also be, talking to you about, how you actually got this thing started, how we actually started Raising Excellence, how it was a great idea, how that great idea turned into what it is today.
Sounds good. I can do that.
So for those of our audience that might be interested in that, check it out.
Absolutely. All right, let's play the outro, say goodbye, and then we'll be on a different podcast in a few minutes. All right.
Some of us will. Some of us still have to cook their food because Mommy didn't bring it to us.
Anyway, bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you for sticking with it.